A wife like you with low income who only does part-time job is not qualified to be my wife. But your sister Julia, on the other hand, is amazing and radiant, unlike you. After all, she also earns $5,000 a month. She's also really beautiful, has a great body, and is gorgeous. There is a world of difference between you and your sister, since you're a woman with no charm at all. So, because of these reasons, it's not my fault that I cheated on you, Natalie. And it's all your fault that I'm acting this way. And that is the reason why I'm marrying your sister, okay? So, go ahead and sign the divorce papers.
Fine, I don't really care. But once we're done, and there comes a time where you regret about this whole thing, it'll be too late by then. Okay?
Huh? Oh, don't you worry. I won't regret it at all.
I think that I had a normal and ordinary, but happy married life with my husband, Dylan. But then, I guess it can all fall apart so easily like this, huh? I looked at my husband as he left the room while mocking me, and thought to myself, oh, how pathetic. But I wasn't thinking about how pathetic I was. It was about how pathetic my husband was. Because my husband would be the one who would lose everything from now on. My name is Natalie. I am married to my husband, Dylan, whom I met through a friend, and we are living an ordinary life together as a couple. Although we were still young and got married to each other, we didn't have any kids, and we were able to devote ourselves to each other's hobbies, friends, and other things that we liked. I like to do crafts and making little dolls. And Dylan, on the other hand, loves going out for drinks with his friends. So, supposedly, he and his friends get together once a month to catch up with each other. One day, when Dylan came home from drinking with his friends, he looked a little dissatisfied, which was pretty unusual. While preparing water to sober him up, I called out to Dylan. "Oh, welcome home, honey." "What's wrong? Why are you frowning, honey?"
Oh, well, I heard that a friend of mine is moving into a new place. And you know that big tower apartment in the neighborhood, which finished construction recently? Well, he's moving into that apartment.
Oh, wow! That's amazing. We can't imagine what that kind of world is like, living in a place like that for us. But it must be really nice. Just like Dylan has said, the construction of the magnificent tower apartment that had been under construction in our neighborhood for several years had finally been completed. I was looking at the construction site wondering what kind of rich people would be living there, but I was surprised that anyone close to us would be living there.
Yeah, it's really hard to imagine, isn't it?
Saying this, Dylan took the glass of water I gave him and chugged it in one go.
My friend's wife is supposedly self-employed and makes a lot of money, which is why they're rich. But compared to that, I'm the only one making any money, so it is definitely not possible for us.
Oh, honey, please don't say it like that. I work at the part-time job too.
But that's no different from a part-time job that even students are doing. I'm sorry, but it doesn't count as a proper work.
As my husband let out a huge sigh, he said that and pushed the empty glass towards me.
But compared to that, Natalie, your sister Julia is amazing, isn't she? When we had dinner with Julia the other night, she was wearing really expensive branded clothes and she's such a beauty, attracting everyone around her. And plus, she also told me that her monthly income is $5,000. Isn't that about 10 times more than what you earn with your petty job?
Dylan said this with a laugh, and disappeared into the bedroom as he walks dizzily since he was also drunk from the alcohol. I let out a small sigh as I watched him disappear. Dylan looks down on me on a regular basis, and I really hate it when he does that. Dylan works for a somewhat small local business, and from what I hear from Dylan, it's a very tough place to work because the pay doesn't increase that much. I understand that, but that doesn't mean that he should look down on me. And recently, Dylan has been praising about what my sister wears frequently. My elder sister, Julia, who is 3 years older than me, also lives nearby where we live. She's also the type of person who likes to go out for drinks, so I knew that she and Dylan often went out for drinks together. Julia has always been popular since we were young. Julia, who is always stylish and beautiful, is pampered and spoiled by everyone around her, and has a personality so different from mine that it is hard to believe that we are even sisters. Being with such a cheerful person like Julia, Dylan and her must get along really well. The two of them would frequently go out to pubs and bars to drink together. I never thought that Julia and I would be compared as sisters even after I got married to Dylan, and to think that my own husband was the one doing it. Today, too, I felt really uneasy about what Dylan had said while I went to sleep. The next day, Dylan, who had the day off, suddenly says something while we were eating breakfast together.
Hey, Natalie, why don't we move? To that big tower apartment.
You're talking about that big tower apartment again? That's an option only for the rich people, you know that, right? As my personal opinion, I think that for us, a small house is just perfect for each other. Plus, I don't think that we'd really feel at home if it's too big like that tower apartment.
Well, that may be true, but if we think about getting old, isn't it not a bad idea to live in a place with good security and moving into a place which is just really clean and nice?
But if we move into a tower apartment now, we won't be able to live the life that we're living right now before we get old. You know that, right? But hearing this, Dylan was still mumbling and complaining, as if he was still not convinced with what I was saying about the truth. I guess he must be very jealous of his friend's success. Dylan has a habit of showing off about who he is and what he has to others, and he wants to be envied by other people for having what he has. Of course, if we could, I would love to live in a nice place like that tower apartment. But even if Dylan and I doubled our income, we would still never be able to afford such a luxurious place.
Well, I knew it, that it would be difficult, because I have a wife who doesn't earn enough.
He says this and looks down on me as he ignores the fact that he himself earns low income. So, as usual, I ignore what Dylan says and drink my soup.
All right, yeah. I guess I'll have to work a little harder too.
Dylan muttered this to himself, his expression brightening a bit as he ate his breakfast. He must have thought of something or an idea, but it's not like you can move into that tower apartment right away. I thought so to myself and did not really ask him what he was thinking, but I was later confronted with a shocking fact. It must have been about a month after we had that breakfast together. On that day, Dylan did not let me know about his drinking session with his friends, which was unusual of him, and he came back home in the morning. Hearing a taxi stop near our place, I rushed to the front door. "Hey, Dylan! When you'd get home late, you would always call me in advance, so why didn't you? What's wrong?" You had me really worried. When I opened the front door as I said that, I saw not only Dylan, but Julia with him. Both Dylan and Julia looked really drunk, and the sun was coming up, as it was really early in the morning. They must have been drinking together, judging from the way the smell of alcohol drifted through the air just by facing both Julia and Dylan. But no matter how much they both liked to drink, this was the first time they had ever continued drinking until morning. While I was being stunned at the situation, both Dylan and Julia pushed me out of the way and stormed into the house.
Natalie, I need to talk to you. Come over here.
I did as I was told, and I sat around the table as the two sat down before me. Both Dylan and Julia was too drunk that I thought it'd be just a huge hassle to go against them.
Okay, I'm going to just be straightforward with you. I am divorcing you.
What? Is that a joke? I asked with a laugh, but then Julia opened her mouth as she laughed at me contemptuously. Oh, I'm sorry, Natalie. Actually, it's something I've been thinking about for a while now. It seems like you and Dylan seem to live in completely different worlds. Dylan is much more suited to a woman like me. Julia said this as she hugged Dylan's arm right in front of me. To this, Dylan looked really happy. I just couldn't believe what I was seeing from early in the morning. I let out a huge sigh as I was feeling ridiculous about what was happening in front of my eyes. What is the meaning of all this, Dylan?
What do you mean by what is the meaning of this? All you've been doing is you've only been making pocket money and acting all high and mighty while calling that your job is proper work when it isn't, since it's only just a part-time job, and I just couldn't take it anymore.
Oh, I heard everything from Dylan, Natalie. When Dylan said he wanted to live in the tower apartment, you told him that it was impossible. You can't trust what your husband is worthy for, which shows that you're not a fit wife for him. The two of them were laughing happily as they said such things to me in a really drunk manner.
Unlike you, your sister had respected what I suggested. She said to me that I'll be a man who looks good and suits very well in that tower apartment. Like that, she agrees with what I say, and she is a nice woman compared to you.
I was just saying what the reality is, you know? Both you and Julia are just too drunk to make any good decisions. Just praising or complimenting each other that easily won't make any difference, will it? You have always had a poor mindset, and you were always so frugal, so it's no wonder that people around you will be poor too. Do you even know how much Dylan really earns? Julia says that as she glares at me. He earns about $7,000 per month. I couldn't help but laugh at what she said. How could I not know about Dylan's salary? He doesn't even make that much kind of money at all. When I looked at Dylan, he awkwardly turned his eyes away from me. I guess he must have lied to Julia as they were getting excited while they were talking to each other and getting drunk together. So, his usual habit of trying to look good to other people had kicked in, huh?
Anyway, Julia earns a lot more money than you, Natalie, and she also agrees with me and stands up for me. It's no doubt that she's a much better wife than you, Natalie, so that's why I'm divorcing you.
Dylan then brought the divorce papers from his room. I don't know how long he had been preparing the divorce papers, but the only thing which was blank was where I had to sign. Hey, why don't you reconsider this whole thing one more time? It's not something you can decide on the spur of the moment just because you're drunk. And Dylan, you're not being logical about any of this. And Julia, do you really think that father and mother would forgive you for taking away my husband? I couldn't care less about what father and mother would think about this. Because a wonderful man like Dylan wants me for who I am. So I don't need anything else. Hearing this, Dylan was also nodding right next to me. If anyone heard what they were both saying, it was clearly obvious that Dylan and Julia was both only after the money. Knowing that Dylan and Julia was in this situation, there would be no point in trying to persuade them any longer, no matter how much I tried. Besides, there was no way I would be able to persuade them. when I've seen how they were like to each other. Dylan had always looked down on me, whether it was about earning money or just anything else in general, and having him requesting for divorce, I was actually beginning to feel a little better about the situation. Fine, we'll get a divorce, but it's too late to regret anything, okay? I signed the divorce papers as I said that, and the two of them rushed me to submit the papers to the city office immediately. They called a taxi for me and made me submit the divorce papers right away. After witnessing that I had submitted the divorce papers, both Julia and Dylan then officially got married a few weeks after that. The two were so well prepared for this. I also left the house, leaving Dylan and Julia, who seemed to be enjoying themselves in front of my eyes. And right after I left, they went to buy a room in that tower apartment on the same day. The total amount to buy a room in that tower apartment was about $2 million. When I first heard the amount, my mind went blank, and I really couldn't process that amount in my head.
Julia and I would move out next week, so I'll give this house back to you. Looking back on it now, it's such a small, shabby house.
Dylan described mercilessly about the house like that, even though it was where we had lived together since we got married. Dylan wanted to make himself look superior by looking down on someone else, no matter what. I see. Well then, I wish you both all the best. And that was the last time Dylan and I had talked with each other. On the day Dylan had moved out, he left without even saying goodbye. And since then, few days passed. The house was a little bigger now that they both left, but it was just the right size for living alone. I was finally free, being able to spread my wings comfortably for the first time in a long time. Then suddenly, the doorbell rang loudly. When I saw through the peephole, I saw Dylan right outside, and he looked really pale.
What the hell is wrong with that woman? Everything she told is a lie.
Dylan began to sit down by the front porch. Oh, so you must have finally realized by now who Julia really is, huh? While Dylan was sitting on the front porch, I explained who Julia really was through the door. Well, to begin with, Julia doesn't really even earn $5,000 per month. Actually, she doesn't even work full-time, and like me, she made her living by having a part-time job. Nevertheless, the reason she was able to wear such expensive clothes or have expensive branded goods was because Julia's boyfriends were paying everything for her. I knew that there were several men who'd do that for Julia, but I knew that once Julia got married, all of them would stop doing that. And plus, Julia knew how to spend a lot on things and could not be frugal and save any money at all. In terms of the money she received by her past boyfriends, she probably had a monthly income of about $10,000, but by the end of the month, since she would spend everything, she would have zero savings, which is why she would invite Dylan out for drinks for him to pay for her, so that she wouldn't have to pay for her own food expenses. And above all, she was in a lot of debt. She was also devoted to gambling, and from that, she was in debt. But she did lots of gambling so that she could just spend lavishly on shopping. The amount in which she had to repay for her debt was about $5,000 per month. In other words, Julia's debt was a lot more than the rent of the house where Dylan and I had lived. In the end, Dylan abandoned me and chose to be with Julia, who was in a lot of debt and had a habit of spending the money away. So, of course, there was no way that Dylan could afford to live such a rich life which he dreamed and planned for himself when he got together with Julia.
That woman! She's lied about everything to me. She's just scamming me, isn't she?
Well, you were also lying and pretending that you were earning $7,000 a month to Julia, weren't you? So you shouldn't be even saying that. You both did that to yourselves. The fact that the two of them were both just trying to make each other look good by lying about the truth was completely ridiculous. Dylan was talking as if he was the victim, but he had no right to talk that way since what he did was the same thing.
Well, why didn't you tell me about this in the first place? You were my wife.
Well, I'm not nice enough to give you any advice after you looked down on me like that. Because like what you and Julia said to me, it seems like I'm not really qualified to be a wife, right? After Dylan had heard what I had to say, he understood everything and began crying miserably at the door.
I'm so sorry, Natalie. I was completely wrong. I beg you, please just start over with me. If I continue to stay with that woman, I'll be ruined too.
It's too late to regret it now. I will never, ever get back together with you. So, can you please leave now? If you make any scene here, all the neighbors will see what you're doing and it'll be a rumor in no time, okay? Since you want other people to know that you're a good person, that's the last thing you want to be seen as, right? Dylan seemed to have been at the door for a while, but before I knew it, he left the house. He hates more than anything to be seen crying by the people he knows or he has met before. I felt just a little sorry for him, thinking that he would be a lot more miserable in the future. It seems like Dylan stayed at the tower apartment for only a few days and immediately sold the room. But since a large amount of debt remains for the tower apartment, he will have to pay it off bit by bit from now on. Julia and Dylan currently rented a new room and is living in it, but it is a small apartment for two people to live in, and they seem to be constantly fighting every day. Everything is coming all to Dylan with the fact that his divorce from me was due to his affair, and that he also had to pay alimony to me because of what he has done. The remaining debt for the tower apartment, and the rent, and the alimony. Naturally, it is not something Dylan, who really has a low monthly salary, can afford to pay, which is why he also began doing part-time jobs and other different jobs on the side, so that he could pay off what he had to pay. As for Julia, who is living with Dylan, she must have seen how frugal they both have to be, but it seems like she bought tons of clothes at a local clothing store the other day. It seems that her spending habits are still very much alive and probably very difficult to get rid of it. By seeing Julia being like that, it is hard to imagine when she will be able to pay off her debts. It looks like Julia tried to run away to our parents' house a few times, but Father disowned her because I had already reported this outrageous incident to him. Even I can no longer see Julia as my own elder sister. Compared to Dylan and Julia, my life has become a little easier, all thanks to Dylan's alimony. Plus, the manager of my part-time job asked me if I wanted to become a full-time employee. My manager said that they had just lost one of their full-time employees and wondered if I would be interested. I agreed to the offer right away. Thanks to this, I was able to earn enough money to live a comfortable life, even though I lived alone. So like this, in the end, I probably now earn more money than Dylan. Well, I guess I'll just treat myself to a nice little dinner tonight. Thinking that, I would return to my favorite house while looking at the big tower apartment which is standing in the distance. Thank you for watching until the end. Please subscribe to our channel. We hope to see you in our next video.
My husband divorced me for the reason of infertility. 10 years later, he was shocked to see my son.
When are you going to have a baby? Who do you think is paying for your expensive treatment? You money-eating bitch. My husband threw the divorce papers at me. What's with that defiant look? I've been taking care of you until now, you worthless piece of shit. Why don't you thank me and get the hell out of here? You don't work and you can't procreate. Who would want to be with a defective old hack like you? At best, you crawl miserably through life. I had been a housewife for 10 years and was abandoned at the age of 40. due to infertility. How was I supposed to live from then on? What saved me from losing the will to live was my beloved child who came into my life after the divorce. My son, who was like an angel smiling at me, called me Mom, and changed my life for the better. I never imagined that this angel was going to send my ex-husband to hell. My name is Kylie. My husband Josh and I were married for 10 years, and I was a full-time housewife. Both of us love children and look forward to having our own, but it was taking a long time. In the beginning, we were relaxed about it, saying it's blessing in disguise. When we were still childless after 5 years, we decided to undergo fertility treatment. Josh believed that it was something women undergo and that the inability to have children was a problem on the woman's side. He was definitely not cooperative. Furthermore, the treatment was expensive, and when he saw me frequently falling ill due to the side effects, he would say, "Who do you think is paying for this? I'm not paying a lot of money so that you can fall sick in bed." He always complained. After 5 years of treatment, he seemed to have lost patience. Despite the best efforts of both myself and my doctor, I was unable to conceive a child, and the cost of treatment just kept mounting. Frustrated by the situation, he finally asked for a divorce. I tried to talk to him and asked him to reconsider several times. He had probably already given up on me, so he refused to have a talk. At the age of 40, I was going to throw a divorce and become single again. I felt as if there was a gaping hole in my chest, but I worked hard to survive. When I was going through the treatment, I got a part-time job to help cover the expensive bills. Fortunately, I was able to continue working the same job, and they even gave me more hours after I explained the situation. In addition, my manager had been talking about promoting me to a full-time position for a while, so he submitted my application to the head office for me. My days passed quickly and frantically from then on. About a month after I left Josh, my life was drastically changed again. My best friend from high school was in a fatal car accident with her husband. We used to share our joys and sorrow together. Throughout the time I was having trouble conceiving until the divorce we filed, she was always by my side. At first, I could not believe that she was gone. It sounded surreal, but as soon as I saw her face at the funeral, I felt as if the colors had vanished from the world. As I was leaving the funeral home, dizzy and haste, someone caught my eye. A small curled-up figure on the side of the parking lot. I had met him several times. He must have just entered elementary school. I had no idea how big he had become. The small figure that was frozen in time was my late best friend's son, Oliver. My chest tightened to see the way he sat there with his knee to his chin and stared blankly at the ground. I wondered what was going to happen to him who had lost his parents and was suddenly alone. Both of his late parents had no surviving family members, and they didn't have any close relatives. I was afraid that he would be sent around to one foster family after another. I couldn't bear the thought and offered to take him in at that point. As an outsider, I thought I might have caused a stir for saying such a thing, but it was granted relatively easily after agreeing not to ask for any help in any way. Oliver also agreed to live with me without hesitation. After that, things just fell into place, and I took in the huge responsibility to raise him alone. As expected, my life as I knew, it was gone. Every day was like a storm, and I realized how hard it was to care for a child. I grew a deep respect for all the parents in the world. My days were dazzling busy, but also joyful. Oliver and I fought from time to time, but I gave him the maximum amount of love I could. He grew up without any serious illness or injury. After nearly 10 years of living together, he had just started high school. We were out shopping for dinner when we bumped into Josh. He looked surprised to see Oliver standing next to me, but then he started speaking mockingly. "You, why do you have such a big son? Were you cheating on me?" "Hey, don't make such a vile accusation. This is—" "I knew it. He must be the child of your affair. Otherwise, you wouldn't have such a grown son." "Stop it. I never cheated on you, and only the two of us have been living together. Anyway, he is my—" I tried to explain, but he interrupted me every time. He never listened to others when he believed something was wrong, but I thought he got worse than before. He gave me a creepy smirk while he spoke. "Oh my God, you were dumped by your cheating partner, weren't you? Poor you. I bet you must be having a hard time since you weren't really making money." "You idiot. You're so rude." Josh, perhaps amused that I was offended, continued to smirk at me. It was about to walk away from his insensitive guy when I noticed something odd. Why did he assume that I had a child with another man? He knew very well that I was on infertility treatment for 5 years, but never conceived. I asked him exactly what was on my mind. "Why do you think he's my child? You know I'm infertile, don't you? So why do you think I had a child with another man?" I'm just guessing. Even if I had cheated on you, you know I can't get pregnant. That's why we got divorced. Do you happen to forget such an important thing?" "Yeah, that's right. How many years has it been since we divorced?" It was suspicious. He was staring at me condescendingly just a moment ago, but his eyes started to shift. My suspicion grew by the sudden change of his attitude. "Is there something you're holding back from me?" "I'm not hiding anything." "Really?" I took a step toward him, and he took a step back. When I stared at his face, he made an awkward expression and started to explain. What he said was surprising. After we got divorced, one of his colleagues told him about male infertility. He was curious, so he got tested and found that he had abnormal sperm function. In other words, he was the cause of infertility. He had been reluctant to participate in the treatment with me, so we were unable to have a child. "So, you mean I couldn't conceive because—" "Yeah, it was my fault." "Oh my God. You were mocking me for not being able to give you a child, weren't you? That's why you cheated on me and left me, wasn't it?" "Excuse me?" He was calm at first, but as he spoke, his voice grew louder and louder. His emotions seemed to be building up. "You knew I had a problem, weren't you? That's why you found someone else." "Wait a minute. Oliver is my late best friend's son. She died in an accident, so I took him in, and I've been raising him as my adopted son." "Shut up! Shut up! That's a lie. You've always been a flirt. You must be lured some guy. You useless bitch." No matter how hard I tried to explain to him, he didn't listen to me. I was at a loss as to what to do. He was shouting at me at that point. His words became more and more abusive. People were glancing at us. I felt very uncomfortable. When I was about to speak, Oliver, who had been quietly watching our exchange next to me, spoke up. "Please, stop insulting my mother." "What the hell? If you continue being rude to her, I will call the police." Josh flinched as Oliver flashed his phone at him. After glaring at him resentfully, Josh said nothing, but just clicked his tongue and walked away. "Thank you, sweetheart." If you ever need help, just call me. He seemed illogical, so it's not safe for you to talk to him alone. But, no but, it's dangerous. Okay. I couldn't believe that my son had come to my rescue. I thought he was still a child, but I was unexpectedly moved by how much he had grown up. Several more years passed. Oliver was about to graduate from university, and it was time for him to look for a job. We had planned to dine out together after his job interview. He was running late, so I was waiting for him at our meeting point when Josh appeared in front of me. Yo, Grace. Josh? He still had a nasty smirk as before, but his clothes were tattered and his shoes had holes. The way he appeared was so disheveled that I wouldn't have recognized him unless he called out to me. As I stood there, unable to say anything from the shock, Josh staggered close to me. Hey, honey, why don't we get remarried and live together again? What? Yes, let's do that. Let's live together. Unable to grasp his incoherent demand, I just stood there like a statue. He was getting closer and closer. When his hand touched my shoulder, I jerked back and bumped into someone. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm okay. Are you alright? The older man looked at me with concern, as if he sensed something strange in the air. The man glanced at Josh and was about to say something. Hey, you! Stay away from my mother! Oliver, who had just arrived, stepped in between me and Josh. Ugh, good timing. I'm going to be your father, so you're going to have to support me, you understand? What the hell? What are you talking about? A child who was abandoned by his parents and didn't grow up feeling their love must be facing a hard life. Probably you can't even find a good job and will live like a loser. If you can't be happy living in poverty, you should at least be a good son and devote yourself to your father. You're making no sense. If it was only about me, I could put it up with it. But to make fun of him is abominable. My vision was distorted with rage. He knew nothing about us and had no right to speak about us. I clenched my fist in frustration. Oliver seemed to be indignant as well. Perhaps he was hurt to be taught unfairly during a sensitive time in his job search. He bit his lip in frustration. I had to protect him. When I glared at Josh with all the hate in the world, the man who had been quietly watching us spoke calmly. With all due respect, this young man has already been accepted by my company. You should have received a call today. Huh? What are you talking about, old man? You had nothing to do with us, so don't get involved. I actually do. I assumed I have more to do with him than you. Oh, I'm sorry. I have introduced myself. The man took out his business card. Josh was astounded when he read it and looked at the man's face and the card over and over again. When I looked at the card, the title, Chief Executive Officer, was written on it. The company name was the same as Oliver's first choice. Both he and I were too stunned to say anything. The man continued to speak in the same calm manner. I was friends with Oliver's late father. Before his death, we used to play golf together, and I used to visit his house. Oliver was very young, so I don't think he remembers me. I played with you too, Oliver. After your parents passed away, I heard that a friend of your late mother took you in. You've been raised by a wonderful person. I can see the shadow of your late father, not only in your appearance, but in your kind heart. He had a strong sense of justice too. The three of us intently listened to the man. He looked at Oliver compassionately and then moved his eyes upon Josh. His calm voice abruptly changed, and he started to speak sternly. Oliver has grown up to be a very fine man raised by her and his late parents. On the contrary, how about you? You curse others in such a blunt manner in a public place? Before you speak ill of him, you should reflect on yourself in the mirror. Shut up, old man! Don't get too comfortable with me just because I listened to your story. Turning red, Josh drew closer to the man. When he was about to grab the man's neck, his hands were stopped by other hands. Hey, calm down. Come with us. Let's talk over there. Surprised by the sudden appearance of the police, I glanced at Oliver, who was holding out his phone. I wondered when he had called them. I was being protective while I was trying to protect him. It wasn't the right time to be emotional, but I was moved by Oliver's maturity. He was not a little child to be protected anymore. Mom, are you okay? I looked at him with a strange feeling of happiness and sadness. He stared back at me curiously. I'm fine, thank you. His stiffened expression relaxed as he was relieved. After that, Josh was out of control for a little while, but the police took him down. He was taken away with his head hung down as if he had given up. I have not seen him since then. I heard through the rumor that he remarried a such younger colleague after divorcing me, but they were unable to have a child. His wife was very insistent, and he reluctantly told her about his infertility. She wanted a child so badly that she was outraged by him for not telling her earlier, and they divorced. In addition, all the complaints she made to her colleagues started circulating at work, and he was too ashamed to keep working there. He resigned from his job, but he was having a hard time finding new employment. He had to make do with a part-time job to survive. It was during that time he happened to run into me again, and that was how the whole thing came to be. I don't know where he is and what he is doing now, but I sure hope he'll never appear in front of Oliver and me again. I have consulted with the police and have taken countermeasures just in case. Oliver got his own place after he landed on the job. We're still close and talk on phone every day. He's having a hard time getting used to his unfamiliar life, but he's determined to stand on his own feet. As for me, I fell in love at first sight with the CEO, who helped me at that time. I invited him to dinner as a way of thanking him, and we had an unexpectedly good time. Since we were both single, we've been meeting for lunch or dinner since then. Oliver is amazed by my excitement at being in love for the first time in a long while. He listens to me and gives me advice. He is a really good son. When Josh and I divorced, I had no idea such a life was awaiting me. You never know what life has in store for you.
My husband left our daughter suffering in pain. 5 days later, he called me when I was at her funeral.
To call an ambulance for a mere headache and vomiting is overreacting. If you are so worried, why don't you just come home and take care of her? I mean, isn't that your job? Don't rely on me. I don't have time for this. I'm leaving now. You have to take care of the rest of yourself. While my daughter cried and crouched in pain, my husband left the house. She had always been healthy and never had any serious illnesses. How was it an overreaction when such a daughter was suffering? It was clear that he was not concerned about her at all. I was out working at the time, but fearing for her life. I immediately returned home and called an ambulance myself. If I had been there for her from the beginning, she didn't need to suffer so much. As I held her hand, I cried from frustration and blamed myself. 5 days later, when my husband finally called me, I quietly told him, I'm in the middle of our daughter's funeral. I'm Stacy, 45 years old. I work part-time and do my best to take care of the house and raise my daughter. I met my husband through a matchmaker. When I was single, I had a full-time job in a field that was dominated by females. It was difficult for me to meet someone at or through work. I had always had a strong desire to get married and didn't want to wait until I was older. I decided to go to a matchmaking service and was introduced to my husband, Wayne. He was a meticulous person who did things very carefully. On the other hand, I was more laid back, so at first I thought we were two opposites and incompatible. As we got to know more about each other, we came to respect our differences. We were so in love that it was hard to believe we met through a matchmaker. I was grateful for my luck fate. When we got married, Wayne only wore the ring during the ring exchange as he was allergic to it. We enjoyed our honeymoon period to the fullest, and then we conceived 2 years after our marriage. A healthy baby was born, and we were overjoyed. You did great, honey. We have a very pretty baby girl. Thanks, hon. She's adorable. Let's do our best to raise her with lots of love. He was totally head over heels for our daughter, Mia, even more than I was. He even used her birth weight for the license plate number and passwords. Seeing him like that filled me with the warmth of love, and I believe we will continue to live happily ever after. As the months passed and around the time Mia entered high school, Wayne suddenly started working overtime a lot. I'm in charge of a new project now. I'll be home late today, so don't wait for me. In the worst case, I'll have to stay overnight at the office. I understand. It's really tough every day, isn't it? I'm grateful that you're working hard, but don't overdo it. I'm sure it's okay if you come home early once in a while. Love you. I was proud of him for climbing the ladder at work. However, he seems to be overworked to the point of locking himself in the study on his days off. I understood that he was exhausted and needed some time alone. There were hardly any interactions with his family, which created a gloomy atmosphere in the house. Mia had always been a daddy's girl since she was little. Dad's been locked in his study a lot lately. I understand that he's busy, but I want to hang out with him like we used to. She lamented with me. I knew I had to do something for her and suggested to Wayne, Hey, honey, why don't we go out for dinner this coming weekend for the first time in a while? I was taken aback by his unexpected response. You're gonna be kidding, right? You know I'm exhausted. Is this harassment? Why can't you just let me relax on my day off? He suddenly lashed out at me. You don't have to get mad at me. It's not good for you to stay cooped up in your room all day long. Going out is a good way to refresh yourself after a hard day's work, isn't it? I tried to calm him down. Leave me alone. You guys go ahead and do what you want. He was adamant in his refusal. Since then, he began to pick on me out of his frustration and sarcastically commented, I so envy your freedom. I spent more time with Mia, but she was hurt by not getting attention from her father and locked herself in her room. I felt that my family was on the verge of collapse and hoped that once this project was finished, our normal, cheerful life will return. 1 month had passed since then. I'm going on a training trip with my team for 5 days starting tomorrow. I was surprised at the suddenness of the news and at the same time, I asked him what bothered me. "Oh, that's so sudden. Besides, it's already been a month since you were assigned to your new project. Are you still doing the training?" I questioned the duration. "Nothing odd about the prolonged training. Keep your nose out of my business." He kicked me to the curb. I was frustrated with his grumpiness and wondered when he would be able to spend time with the three of us. The next day, he was getting ready to leave for the trip. He was still at home when I left the house for work. My daughter was off school for a substitute holiday. I thought they could spend a little time together before he left. I was hoping that they could talk about some of the things that had piled up. Right after I arrived at work, I received an unexpected text from Mia. "Mom, my head hurts so bad. I feel like it's going to crack. I feel nauseous too. I can't take it anymore." She seemed to be fine when I left home, but she suddenly felt ill. I called her in a hurry, but she wasn't picking up the phone. I called Wayne for help. "Are you still at home? Mia sounds like she's in a lot of pain. Can you call an ambulance right away?" I had lost my grandmother to a subarachnoid hemorrhage, so I was very concerned that she was suffering from the similar symptoms. "It's just a headache and vomiting. Don't you think you're overreacting? If you're so worried, why don't you come back and take care of her? I'm leaving soon, so you take care of the rest." His reaction was unbelievable. Despite his daughter's distress, he was about to leave for a trip. "Wait, what the hell? How could you not help your own daughter when she is in such trouble? Is your job that important to you?" I lashed out at him in a harsher tone than usual. "I'm telling you, you're just making a big deal. It's raining today. She must be feeling the pressure. Anyway, if you came back, the problem would be solved. Time management is a basic rule for my job. I can't be late for something like this." He threw all the responsibility on me and put his work first. I felt no affection for Mia from him, who used to care so much about her. I hung up the phone and made my way home, praying. He had already gone, and I found Mia unconscious in the living room. The ambulance came right away and rushed her to the hospital. I called Wayne after the doctor explained to me her symptoms. He must have been busy and didn't pick up my calls. If I had been there for her, she didn't need to suffer so much. I shed tears and regretted my helplessness. 5 days later, I finally received a call from Wayne in the evening. The first thing that came out of his mouth was, "You don't have to prepare my dinner tonight." I was stunned for a moment. I had been wondering how he could come home after leaving Mia in that condition. He didn't even call to find out how she was in those 5 days, and it sounded as if nothing had ever happened. I cut to the chase and told him, "I'm in the middle of our daughter's funeral right now. I can't prepare dinner anyway. Your trip is over, right? Can you come over now?" As a father, it was expected of him to attend his daughter's funeral. To my surprise, he kept indifferent. "Oh, I see. Well, I won't be able to make it. You can deal with it yourself." He showed no sorrow whatsoever. I reached the boiling point and my anger exploded. I resolved to tell him everything that was on my mind when he got back home. He returned late at night. "Why didn't you call an ambulance right away? Do you have any idea how much you suffered?" I had been waiting for this moment and immediately started attacking him. "Oh, come on. I haven't been home in a while and you don't even welcome me back. Even if I called an ambulance that day, it doesn't mean she survived, right? What's done is done. I brought you some sweets. Make yourself feel better. I was stunned by no sign of remorse from him and lost all energy to argue. He seemed to take advantage of it. Give me all the insurance money. I'm the one who has been paying for everything in regard to our daughter. You're just a part-timer with a low income, so you have no right to it. He grinned at me. How can you say such a thing right after losing our precious daughter? It's not all about work. Why don't you think about your family a little? His inhuman arrogance infuriated me. He was not intimidated by me, though. It's your responsibility to take care of daughter's health. It's your fault for not fulfilling your duty. It's a false accusation to say that she died because of me. He snapped back at me. I knew that arguing with him would get me nowhere. I produced an image that caused tremendous stress from Mia. You hurt her and put her under stress to the point of destroying her health. Don't tell me you know nothing about this. I showed it to him on Mia's phone. It was a picture of him shopping with a young woman, arm in arm like a couple. On the day he left for the trip, Mia took the opportunity of being alone with him. She showed him the image she had taken and asked him about the affair. She also recorded the conversation. He flipped out, knowing it would be the huge problem if I found out. How dare you! If you tell your mother about this, I'll make sure you will regret it. He threatened her. She told me all of this despite suffering in the hospital bed. That's been having an affair with a young woman behind our back. It was so unbelievable, and the shock and the stress were too much. I started getting headaches and nausea. He used to love me and cared for me, but I can't take it anymore. Mom, please, will you leave him? I demanded a divorce in response to Mia's request. Wayne looked at me, unfazed, saying it wasn't enough to prove his affair. Then, how about these? I threw printouts of the correspondence between him and his adulteress as conclusive evidence. You can't be serious. You got into my computer without my permission. I never told you my password. His expression changed drastically, and he was agitated. I took a liberty. You used Mia's birth weight as your car plate and PIN, didn't you? I thought you might have done the same with your password. Sure enough, I was right. When I looked at his emails and the messaging app on the computer, I found more than enough evidence. He lied to me and Mia that he was busy at work, but in truth, he had been almost cohabiting with the adulteress. The training trip he said he was going on with his team was just a trip with his adulteress using his paid leave. It's an invasion of privacy to go into someone's computer without their permission. He put up a desperate fight, but I relentlessly pursued him. It's wrong to keep things hidden from your family, don't you think? Oh, by the way, I also found a record of you unlawfully obtaining company money to pay off your girlfriend. You can't get away with it now, can you? Admit it now. He fell to his knees in a panic as all his wrongdoings were exposed. I told him I was returning to my parents' house and left the house. A few days later, we filed for divorce. I was to have custody of Mia. I moved her to my parents' house while Wayne was away and focused on getting evidence of his infidelity at home. Before he returned from his trip, I had completed the moving process as well. By the way, I lied to him about Mia's funeral. I wanted to see him weigh between Mia and his affair. He thought that if she was gone, the affair would not be exposed, and he could secretly pay back the company with the insurance money. I realized what a scumbag he was, and I still shudder to think until this day. I gave evidence of him swindling company money to his HR, which led to his disciplinary dismissal. He was asked to refund the exact amount he had spent. He lamented that the amount was so inflated and that there was no way for him to pay in one lump sum. He was such a meticulous man that he had carefully written down the address and phone number of his adulteress on his computer. I contacted her and exposed the whole thing. It's normally a good thing to be meticulous, but in his case, it completely backfired on him. Thus, he's been dumped by his adulteress, and even his parents cut ties with him. He's been living lonely and working hard to pay the alimony, child support, and refunds to his ex-company. I've been told that he was so anxious about stealing money from work, so he was taking his stress out on me. I'm really sorry. I only gave in to stupid temptation. He apologized and tried to get me back with him. It's way too late, and I refuse to forgive him. After being subjected to immense stress every day, Mia, who used to be a daddy's girl, says, I never want to see him again. She's been receiving the support of my parents and me, and positive advice from a friend in a similar situation. She's getting her normal self back. Are you sure you're happy that we got divorced as you wanted? Of course. A father I don't care about is nothing but a nuisance. I'm very happy to realize how deeply you cared about me. Thank you for being there for me, Mom. I love you. Thank you too for being my daughter. I love you so much. We held each other tightly in tears, realizing once again the importance of each other. We're taking the first step toward a brighter future together.
My husband got into an accident while he was cheating on me. He asked me to take care of him, but I refused him.
My name is Sadie, and I am 28 years old, and I am a housewife. I have been working for the company where I have been working all my life, but I quit the company once I found out that I got pregnant. But the year our daughter Nicole was born, my husband, Kevin, said that he was going to work as a freelancer and left the company where he has been working at. I asked him repeatedly if he had any proper income by doing the work as a freelancer. But every time I asked him, he kept on assuring me by saying,
Oh, don't worry. Working as a freelance is much better than being an unrewarding company employee.
And with that, he began working from home. At first, it seems that my husband's work was going well, as he was receiving jobs from multiple clients. But gradually, the amount of work orders which he would receive got really unstable. I felt that it was mentally tough to have a child while depending everything on my husband's unstable income alone. So, when our daughter turned 2 years old, I asked the company I had left to allow me to return to work as at least a part-time worker so that I can work shorter hours. And since I began my part-time job at the company, we have managed to make a stable living as a family. So, while I was at work, my husband would be the one to take care of our daughter. I was a little worried because my husband is a bit of a sloppy person who would quit his job all of a sudden. But when our daughter started kindergarten, he suggested and insisted that he would drop her off and pick her up as well from the kindergarten. Well, there is no rule that the wife should necessarily always be the one to always do the house chores, take care of the house, or take care of the child. So, like this, I convinced myself that there are many married couples with this style of marriage nowadays. But then, something feels a little off with my husband lately. I don't really know the reason why, but I have a gut feeling that there is something strange going on with my husband. My husband is always clutching onto his phone very close to him and staring at the phone screen with a huge grin on his face. And he even takes his phone into the toilet, or takes his phone while he's taking a shower or taking a bath. And now recently, he has been going out more and more compared to before. There was this one incident where my husband even went out during the day while leaving our daughter behind. And when our daughter tried to pick up something which was on a shelf, she climbed up on the chair, fell down, and broke her arm. To what had happened, I said to my husband, "Why didn't you take care and look after Nicole properly? I can't believe that you would even go out and leave Nicole all by herself." And to this, my husband said,
What? I can't even have my own time to relax by myself? What are you talking about when you put all the responsibility of raising our daughter only on me?
and he got really angry at me.
You're such a pain in the ass. Women like you make me so pissed off.
Kevin would say all these kind of things just to defend himself, and to me, everything he said was completely unbelievable. It feels like my husband has completely changed his mind to another woman and does not care about me or our daughter at all. I was so shocked and stunned at the situation that I felt as if there was a huge hole in my heart, which was being filled with anger and sadness. Since that incident, my husband has been staying out frequently, not even coming back home for the night without any hesitation, saying that he had to go out to collect data for his work. The last time Kevin came back home while he stayed overnight somewhere, which he won't even tell me where he stayed the night, he clearly had a hickey on his neck, and it was so visible that it felt like as if he was trying to show it off. Seeing this, I was completely sure about what Kevin has been doing. I don't need a guy like him, and I just really want to divorce him as soon as possible. If Kevin keeps on treating me like that, he probably thinks of me as just his ATM, where he can just get money off from. When I thought like that, I was just so frustrated and disappointed that Kevin had thought of me that way. I wanted to get away from him in a way that was advantageous to me, and that would make my life stable after our divorce. So, I tried to find out more about my husband and his affair. But he was very thorough about hiding what he has been doing and what he had done, and did not leave any kind of evidence back at home. The other day, while my husband was sleeping, I secretly took his finger and opened the fingerprint authentication on his phone and looked at his phone to check his messages. But to my surprise, the conversation with the woman who seemed to be having an affair with him was nowhere to be found, as he seems to delete the chat and the data every day before going to bed. What should I do? While I was being troubled with no chance to get proof of my husband's affair, at an unexpected moment, I finally learned the whole truth about his affair. One day, suddenly, in the middle of the night, my phone rang. And that call was from the police. I had asked the police what had happened, and after hearing the police's story, it seemed that my husband had been in a car accident. My husband had rented a car, and he was the one who had caused the car accident. And not only my husband, but also a woman who was a passenger in the car was seriously injured and taken to the hospital. And that woman, I'm sure, was whom Kevin was having an affair with. On the day Kevin had left, he said that he was on a business trip for an interview for his job. But the truth was that Kevin was actually on a trip with the woman who he was cheating on me with. I almost went hysterical with anger, but I managed to calm myself down. Called my parents, asked them to take care of our daughter, and hurried to the hospital where Kevin and his mistress was. The receptionist at the hospital told me that neither Kevin nor the woman were both in life-threatening condition, which was a relief. But according to the doctor who was in charge of Kevin and the mistress, had told me that there was a possibility that my husband would not be able to walk and use his legs permanently due to the impact of the accident. And even if he recovered from his injuries, he would probably have to live his life in a wheelchair. I also asked about the condition of the woman who was in the car with Kevin. The doctor did not give me any details, but she said that the window of the car was broken and that a piece of the window glass had pierced her face, which left a huge scar on her face. The doctor also said that the woman had a neck injury from the impact of the collision, and that she was currently lying on the bed with her neck immobilized. I felt a little bit sorry for Kevin's mistress because she is a woman who now has a huge scar on her face. But at the same time, I felt in my heart that that is what she deserves, since she got karma. When I entered the hospital room, which was a two-person room, I saw Kevin and the woman who appeared to be his mistress sleeping on the bed side by side. The nurse said that normally men and women would have separate rooms, but this was the only room available for now, which is why they were both put in the same room, because they were riding in the same car. I stood in front of the woman and looked at her face. Oh, I think I have seen her somewhere before, maybe. Then, as I thought to myself, I had realized that this woman is our daughter's kindergarten teacher. So, in other words, my husband was having an affair with the kindergarten teacher. No wonder my husband insisted at that time that he would be the one to take our daughter to and from kindergarten every day, which was pretty unusual of him to even suggest. And now that I think about it, Kevin had also insisted on going to parent-teacher conferences. And so like this, everything made all sense to me now. My husband seemed to wake up and noticed that I was there and said, "Oh," in a quiet voice. "I knew that you were cheating on me, but I didn't really realize that you were cheating on me with our daughter's kindergarten teacher."
Oh, no. This is... Well, she is really beautiful and very nice, so I guess I couldn't really help it, you know? My husband looked really weak as he said this, which was unlike his usual attitude and tone, probably because the doctor had already informed him that he had to live his life in a wheelchair from now on. I can't keep on going on doing this with you anymore. Let's just get a divorce. Hey, no, wait a minute. I only just lost myself for a moment, you know? And I won't do this ever again.
No, I'm sorry, but this is not acceptable. You'd say that you wouldn't do it again, but doing it even once is just completely unacceptable.
No way! You heard everything from my doctor, didn't you? That I'm going to be in a wheelchair my whole life from now on.
Yes, so?
What do you mean, so? What the hell are you talking about? You should at least take care of me.
And why should I even do that for you? Why should I, who got cheated on by you with another woman behind my back, have to take care of you?
That's because I'm the one who's been providing for you and our daughter this whole time.
Excuse me? It's because I began to do my part-time job, we're able to make ends meet and live decently like we have been all this time. Kevin, we can't depend on your income alone because it was too unstable. Have you even forgotten the times when you were only earning $1,000 or $500 a month?
Well, that's...
Anyway, I have definitely set my mind on getting a divorce from you. I'll even request for alimony from you.
Oh, you must be crazy. You're just the worst human being ever.
And who do you think is the worst human being? You were the one who left our daughter behind all alone by herself so that you could have an affair with that woman. The mistress, who was beside Kevin, was crying out in pain when she was first brought in, and since she was giving a very strong anesthetic, she's now sleeping deeply even when Kevin and I were arguing loudly. Anyways, let's just communicate through our lawyers about what and how we are going to proceed about this. With saying that, I left the hospital room. Well, I am definitely going to be busy from now on. First comes divorce, then I'll have to also request for alimony and the child support. I have to make sure I get everything on what I was entitled to. I also went back home to my parents' place and explained to my parents about what had happened. They were both very angry with what had happened and said, "I'll take care of our grandchild and you can also come back here now, Sadie." And the next day, I went to the kindergarten to turn in all the documents for my daughter Nicole, as she will no longer go to that kindergarten anymore. When I got there was a bit of a commotion in the kindergarten because that teacher, who was Kevin's mistress, had not arrived yet. No one would know that she was in the hospital and even sleeping in the same room as my husband. I looked at the commotion as I finished handing in the necessary documents and finished the paperwork, and I was just about to leave the kindergarten. Then, that was when Tammy, a mother to a really good friend of Nicole, came up and began talking to me. "Oh, how rare of you to be here. Your husband is the one who comes here all the time." So, I explained that my husband had been in a car accident. Then to that, Tammy said, "Oh, really? Well, I'll go visit Kevin at the hospital the next time with my husband." Using this as a great opportunity, I told her that the person who was also in the same car with Kevin was also being hospitalized in the same room. And I also told Tammy to go visit them as soon as possible, as I knew that they would be happy to see her. And so, it seems like Tammy had visited Kevin and his mistress that Saturday. At that time, Kevin and his mistress were still in the same room, which is why soon after Tammy visited the hospital, I got a call from her right away. I acted like I was crying over the phone and told Tammy that my husband was actually having an affair with the kindergarten teacher. You know, Kevin had even lied to me about going on a business trip, but actually, he had gone on a road trip together with that kindergarten teacher behind my back. And even the other day, Kevin had left our daughter Nicole at home all alone so that Kevin and that teacher could meet up with each other. So that's why I decided to get a divorce with Kevin, move back home to my parents, and move my daughter to a different kindergarten. Since Tammy has a strong sense of justice, she was outraged about what had happened and said, "That's totally unacceptable." And after that, it seems like the story quickly became known throughout the whole kindergarten. So as a result, the teacher, who was Kevin's mistress, had to quit the kindergarten. And that teacher is now suing Kevin for causing the accident, which left her face scarred for life. Then, Kevin called me once saying,
Please help me.
but of course I ignored him by saying, "That's none of my business anymore." I also told Kevin that the only thing I would talk to him about is the divorce and alimony and child support, and hung up the phone on him. For a while after that, Kevin was reluctant to divorce me, but his lawyer finally persuaded him into it, and he finally signed the divorce papers. After that, I took what I could get for the alimony and child support, and Kevin also agreed to the promise where he would never see my daughter at all in the future. My lawyer told me that Kevin had been whining and crying the whole time, begging my lawyer to tell me that Kevin would never do this again and that he wanted me back as his wife. If Kevin needed me like that, then he should have taken care of me properly from the beginning, and not do anything stupid and disgusting like cheating on me with another woman behind my back. I apologized to my lawyer saying, "I am truly sorry for the trouble I have caused you." Anywho, I received $30,000 from my ex-husband and $20,000 from Kevin's mistress as alimony. As for Kevin's mistress, it seems that she was very confident about how she looked, and because of that, she had no confidence anymore because of that huge, hideous scar which is now on her face, and she's no longer able to go outside that freely compared to before. Now, it seems like Kevin's mistress is back at her own parents' house, and she supposedly shut herself into her room most of the time. And as for my ex-husband, since he was hospitalized and was unable to work for a while, most of his clients are gone, and now he does not have any jobs as a freelancer anymore. Actually, it seems like Kevin was forced to pay a penalty fee because he was unable to work on some of the projects due to the accident and missed the deadline for the contract. And currently, my ex-husband is penniless and is now living at home in a wheelchair with his parents taking care of him. Being in such a situation like that, and being a man who got divorced because of his own affair and what he had done, it is probably very difficult for Kevin now to be in a new relationship. This is what Kevin and his mistress deserves for what they did. And on the other hand, I was able to work with shortened hours to full-time, and then back to being a full-time employee again a year later in the company I have always been working at. And now I make enough money to even support my daughter all on my own. I will continue to work hard while watching my wonderful daughter grow up. Thank you for watching until the end. Please subscribe to our channel. We hope to see you in our next video.